Five, four, three, two, one, zero. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are lifting off once again on Live with Andy. I'm your host, Andy DeBala, and we are joined by one of my favorite journalists, probably my favorite journalist out there in the world. I don't know anyone else better off the top of my head. George Webb, thank you once again for joining the show. How are you doing today?
Great, Andy. I just am enjoying all your great research, and it just Mark Kulak's on a roll right now, and the whole research group's on a roll, and this is really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, that is one of the great things about jumping on the George Webb bandwagon. If you guys don't know out there, is you get to participate in the research process yourself. Like George does these Twitter spaces in the morning. We also have groups that do Zoom meetings, and we're always we have these text message threads where I sharing research and breaking down the deep state and getting down to who the players are. And George kind of led the charge on all of this. I've never really seen anything like it before. Usually it just stays on the internet, but you've incorporated it in real life also. And you're having a nice little charrette planned in Windber, Pennsylvania, coming up here. And it just gets down to the bottom of things even more, because you've done a January 6th charrette, where and you've done a COVID-19 charrette, both on the Potomac. You've done some JFK research in New Orleans. So you've done some Salk Institute, some bioweapons research out in California. And it's a great thing you're doing out there, George. And I don't know anyone else out there setting stuff up like this. So keep up the great work. It's a pleasure to take part in it.
Yeah, Andy, it's amazing how you do these things where you go out as a group and you visit a lot of places, and you're not really quite sure how all the pieces fit, but that may be important later on. But there's a lot of information. So by going to these things, you remember it from being there. And then you go, oh, yeah, Michael J. Bennett, he's got 3 patents with Robert Malone, like you experienced in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Or we go to New Orleans, and we go out to the Monkey Lab in Tulane, and we go to the house where David Ferry was flushing the mice down the toilet. Mm-hmm. Barry Baker says Lee Harvey Oswald was flushing mice down the toilet. But if you remember, we went down to the Children's Hospital, and we actually timed how long it would be on the streetcar to get down there.
The Ochsner Institute's involved in all this.
Yep. And we went to all those places. And so now when people start talking about it, we go, oh, yeah. That, like Bob Malone comes out with Chad Roy at the Tulane Monkey Lab, and we're like, whoa, yeah. So it's really been one of those kind of things where we've kind of guessed right, on a lot of the things. I look at on here and I just see we've done 30 of these things. So we kind of felt like Windber was going to be important. Mark Kulak was the first guy on the Bob Malone thing. He's like, hey, did you know that Bob Malone was 15 miles away when Flight 95 hit, or Flight 93? And, I didn't really think of it until all this stuff with Bob Malone started coming out. Like, he was there. Mm-hmm. And there's my Substack, and there's the proof. There's the Bob Malone resume.
Yeah, right on his resume, the Windberg, I always say Windberg, but Windber Medical Center in Pennsylvania. He worked closely with the architect firm to design the space, set up the laboratory facilities for this clinical breast care project, including new facilities design, tissue banking facilities, laboratory, animal rooms, animal surgical site, and office suites. And and this is right next door to the Flight 93 crash.
Yeah,
conspiracy of one, George Webb.
Well, just to make Bob feel good, in my conspiracy of one, I say there's one person and only one that shot down Flight 95. And that was Vice President Cheney, and I show that. But what then I say is there's a lot of people that got involved in being complicit, and these are just to help Bob. You know, I reprint the actual pictures from the film and the direct testimony to help him realize that I'm saying Dick Cheney shot down Flight 95, not Bob Malone. But then I go into saying, hey, there are a lot of things that people want to see. Here's the mayor saying he saw the F-16s really close. You don't want to be a George Bush on this. If somebody asks you where you were on 9/11, right, you want to say, here's my 9/11 story. You don't want to be George Bush saying, I don't remember where I was when Kennedy was shot. And if George Bush is the only person I know who can't remember these really super famous events. Do you remember where you were on 9/11, Andy?
I was in first period science class my freshman year of high school. Mr. Tom Shook was teaching, and he stopped the entire class and told us what was happening, and we busted out the TV and started watching the news for the first time in my life in high school, and it was a giant moment. And of course, I would remember where I was at.
Yeah, you were like 9 years old, 10 years old, or not even that?
Sitting right next to Angela Adamski.
You remember that one. You remember that one really well.
Yes, sir.
Well, you get what I mean is everybody immediately can say this is what this piece is about. And it's these, there are some questions that are just kind of like trust questions. You know, like if you're going to get your surgery done by somebody, you say, well, just out of curiosity, where were you on 9/11? Because you want to make sure all those diplomas on the wall are actually their diplomas. And so what's interesting is I actually was at the place on 9/11. I was at Fort Lewis, Washington, buying some sandwiches for some soldiers. But that turns out to be very close where coronavirus might have broken out. And when event 201 happened, the flip side happened. I was in Washington, D.C., and you saw me there on the 22nd. So 3 days after event 201, thinking, hey, if there is going to be an event 201, it's going to be Kolomoisky, and it's going to be him using drones in a place like this, in a baseball stadium with the smart dust. And I misspelled dust there, but anyway, it's been 4 years. So that's the idea here is that, hey, people just want a transparency. Just say where you were. If you were cutting up anthrax bodies from the people who died out there at the flight, just say it. And we'll understand that Dick Cheney ordered it and shot it down, and you were the guy who had to do the dissections.
Yeah, we're not saying Robert Malone's the one like directing everything. It's like he's just like the man on the scene that is told what to do, and you follow orders when you're in those positions, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, somebody had to take the sample back to Washington, D.C., and from there it invoked continuity of government. That's what Dick Cheney wanted. He wanted collected all surveillance. He wanted National Clandestine Service with 1 million informants in plain clothes. He wanted 2 wars that lasted 20 years. So he wanted all these things. I understand Bob Malone doesn't want to, you know, it might be some kind of classified program. But I really think this is getting embarrassing. We've been asking this question now for like 60 days. Where were you on 9/11? And he can't answer the question. And I'm not accusing him of 9/11. I'm saying Dick Cheney did it. So that he's turned around and tried to say I am accusing him of 9/11. I'm not. I'm just asking you where you were. Eddie, when I asked you where you were on 9/11 in science class, did you think I was accusing you of doing 9/11? No.
Absolutely not. But there is some odd connections that do kind of follow Robert Malone around when it comes to these bioweapons. And like before we just thought it was like the coronavirus, and then we linked them to like Zika and Ebola, and now it goes all the way back to anthrax as well. And you see, like, when Bob Malone kind of appears on the scene, like either a company he's working for or someone he's associated with starts getting some government contracts for vaccines or some type of genetic research. And when you see he gets the job at Dynport, and then the Dynport connections to Porton Down and the anthrax uh, uh, being sequenced, and then Dynport starts getting government contracts. They take over the Bioport anthrax vaccine contract in 2002, like right after Bob Malone shows up on the scene. And it seems to be like a storyline that shows its face over and over again. And that's kind of the reason we're digging into him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying the reason Dynport got the contract was because of Bob Malone. I do think it was because of 9/11, because the contract was for Bioport was going to go away in September. They had a contract with Battelle Lab in Columbus that was going to go away, and just so happens we have an anthrax attack in September. So now the contract gets renewed. But then they said, well, okay, we're going to give this. It had so many problems with the 6 shots, the 6-pack they call it. So many people. Chris IP Hunter had to drop out after 3. It was horrible side effects. So they switched it and said, we're going to go to this Dynport vaccine, which is going to be better. It's not going to have the same problems in the the spoliation, the impurities. And so that's really what Bob Malone gets put into after 9/11. But why not just say that? Why not just say, I went to work for Dynport and I did anthrax vaccines? Don't say you did the smallpox vaccine, because everybody in the room knows that everyone was concentrating on anthrax. But he doesn't want to go there because he doesn't want to say I was a witness to Bruce Ivins and I was, he didn't want to get into the FBI investigation. That's what he's trying to avoid.
That does kind of make sense on his point, but it is like right here you see Dynport Vaccine Company, and they're the firm to do human tests on new anthrax vaccine. And that's kind of what happened in coronavirus with famotidine and some of the at the New York for the New York study they did at the hospital up there. It's like Robert Malone gets shipped the SARS sample from Michael Callahan, and all of a sudden we know the domain story, but all of a sudden there's a famotidine human trial that's being set up at this New York hospital. It's the same thing with Dynport, anthrax, and there's some other companies with Ebola and Zika as well. So it is just, I hate to keep pounding it home, and it is on Bob at this point. It's like all you do is have to answer some simple questions. We'll get off your back. Actually, we may not get off your back a little bit depending on how you answer them. We just want to know where you're at and what you're doing exactly, because we're trying to get to the bottom of the pandemic. We saw the world get shut down. It literally, like the new normal. Like, we've been living in this new normal for 3 years, and they're trying to set up this world government and this where they're trying to just keep us all under surveillance and keep us all under lockdown, and we're trying to avoid that. So if you could help us out a little bit more, Mr. Malone, and help us get to the bottom of it, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Everything in this is a complicated world of viruses and stuff like that. And I'm not asking Bob Malone to give us, try to make us all PhDs in virology. I'm talking about simple stuff. Like, I was in Monkey Lab Abattoir 1 in Windber, and I was cutting open the monkey, and I got out the anthrax kit, and I was looking to see if the monkey was died, whatever. And then I looked up, and somebody ran into the operating room and said, the first tower has been hit in New York. And then we started watching it, and we saw the second tower get hit. and then I closed the monkey up and I incinerated the monkey. Okay, I understand. You're in a monkey lab that you're cutting monkeys open, or humans from wars or whatever. You're looking at tissue samples from anthrax. It doesn't matter. Just be honest and open. I think that's the big thing everybody's looking for. I just had somebody today say, look at the switch in anthrax, because they might have gone from a monkey cell with the BioPort. And I don't know if this is true. This is just somebody who's pretty smart. Mm-hmm. They said they switched over to human embryo for the Dynport. And it's called HEK 293. It was a 293rd experiment this guy named Vander Ebb, this Dutch guy did. And with that, using SV40.
Is this it right here?
That's it.
Okay.
Using SV40, it may have introduced the same cancers. It may have introduced the same cancers going all the way back to the polio vaccine with the monkey lab in Tulane way back when, 50 years ago. And this could be the reason for the rise of the fast cancers, because they used SV40. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, this is crazy.
It's like, how much money do these pharmaceutical companies want, George Webb?
Well, Mark Kulak did a great show on how right from the very get-go, when they started this with Bob Malone, it was all about cancer vaccines. It was all about cancer vaccines right from the get-go. It wasn't just, they were discovering all these genes from the human genome. And as they were doing that, they were saying, well, give me the genes that cause cancer. Because breast cancer is the most common in women. Let's patent those first, wherever those are, find those. And that's but then male, the prostate cancer they went after next. They went after all the blood cancer, one after another, patenting the genes involved. You wouldn't be doing that. I mean, you might be doing that as a good thing, but it's been so secretive. It's been so secretive and tucked away, not in a big center of a city. It's been very secretive. So we want to ask more questions.
Why haven't, if we've been doing all this research, why haven't we actually gotten to the bottom of it and cured cancer? Are they just trying to hide that like everything else?
Well, that's a good question, Andy. I mean, this guy who owns the lab now is a billionaire, and he's been talking about curing cancer for a long time. He set up a secret underground network. We just had a guy on today talking about this Lambda rail network, putting in these huge pipes, for data, setting it all up between these labs and sort of running a secret, I guess I would call it like a Manhattan Project for anthrax, like a Manthrax project, or an underground cancer vaccine program, I guess.
So I'm sorry for cutting you off right here. The FLR network deployed over 1,540 miles of dark fiber. I'm not sure what dark fiber is.
It means it holds a lot more than the light fiber.
Okay.
It's dark because it's so thick.
And the FLR network infrastructure provides for a dedicated statewide communications facility linking major nodes located in Pensacola, Crestview, Tallahassee, Tampa, Winter Haven, Miami, Orlando, Gainesville, Melbourne, Fort Lauderdale, and Jacksonville. I'm surprised Elakua is not on there, or however you pronounce it. The foundation of the infrastructure is a dense wave division multiplexing based optical footprint using Cisco Systems NCS 2000 optical electronic systems with a capacity of 40 wavelengths per fiber pair. Each wavelength can support transmission up to 100 billion bits per second. On top of the optical infrastructure is built an Ethernet-based MPLS transport facility, which provides for Internet 2, and high-speed IP4 and IPv6 transit between participants. Additionally, private layer 2 or layer 3 services VPN may be provisioned. So is that even more like another top level of security there?
Yeah, I mean, this guy was in Ashburn and then Asheville, North Carolina, where they had huge data centers that built for the government. And in the middle of Orlando, who Nick Jacobs, the guy who set up this lab out here in the middle of nowhere, kind of in the Allegheny Mountains in Windber, he said he set up his lab based on this. And the only relationship between Disneyland or Disney World and Epcot Center and SeaWorld and every other world that you could think of and Windber is the high-speed network. There is nothing else the same other than maybe there was a couple of people who went to Disney World because the population center is off the chart right there at I-4 where it meets, I-75, I-95. So this is got to be it, the high-speed network. And there's a big VA hospital. I've interviewed these veterans who they drive the Ubers and Lyft, and they're all got kidney problems. They're all on dialysis. They're all in Germany and so forth. And they got sprayed with different stuff, and they're all on dialysis. And this is what I think is happening, Andy, is this network's called the Apollo Network. And the Apollo Network is taking all the imaging from all the labs for all these tumors and piping it all to this remote location in the Allegheny Mountains. They just signed another deal for this. And this guy, Sun Xiang, is putting together all these he's already done this. He's already put the high-speed underground railroad in. And now they're piping this, all these images to them like crazy. And what they're doing is they're putting in the people that Bob Malone are writing patents with. They're putting in a data layer. They're putting in an AI layer so that they can use AI in diagnostics.
So like if in the future, if I'm a patient going to a health clinic, I can just get like analyzed by some type of artificial intelligence, and they can just boop, 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 and I get injected with a jab by a computer, and then I can just go on my way.
Kind of. I mean, if you look at like your heart, with the fibrillation, and you look at the PQRST wave, and they look at, when different things happen, and you can diagnose that way. That was the first place AI was really used. There was Windber had an association with a group in Poland, a hospital called Lodz, Lodz, where they did the first kind of heart transplant surgery after Christian Barnard in South Africa. So the people that Bob Malone writes all these papers with are part of this network back to Poland. Lotopova, I don't know if you've heard of Lotopova, but her iCardiac product, which kind of would analyze your heart, also did all their work back at Lodz. So there's kind of an overlap between Bob Malone and Lotopova we're looking at.
We've also been talking about like this mRNA jab and some of these other therapeutics kind of being like a form of this like just genetic engineering, and they want to monitor the data, the metadata that comes out of it. If you're a different race, if you're different sex, what happens to you with the different vaccines? Is this just another like major link to that as well, like the just collection of metadata?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And what they really like is what they call this longitudinal information, year over year information, especially if you get a tumor, because every tumor is sort of different, even though you think it should be the same. Even like breast cancer tumors, the proteins in the breast cancer tumor that each woman gets is slightly different. So what they want to do is a snapshot all along diverge and that kind of thing. So I think that's where they're talking about if they see the presence of a couple of proteins here and they have already the snapshots of 20 years forward into the future, they can make predictive analysis back here. Some of the idea is good. I love the idea, but I think it should be a public process. I don't think it should be a secret thing that a billionaire is hiding away and he's going to be now selling us vaccines so we can keep living. That's not a good program here. And Bob seems to be very much a part of this. He seems to be very much a part of it.
Yeah, well, his fingerprints are all over this. I did have a little question for you. You mentioned him
Sure.
working at like him focusing on smallpox while he was at Dynport. I found this interesting just article. An IT firm. This was from 2003. IT firm takes shot at smallpox vaccine. Computer Sciences, a provider of information technology services, says a business it co-owns has made progress in developing a better smallpox vaccine. Um, the El Segundo, California-based company said its joint venture partnership, Dynport Vaccine, achieved hopeful results in a preliminary trial of cell-cultured smallpox vaccine. Um, so then they get into the dry vax. Apparently, that's what they called it. Computer Science has said that in the study of 350 volunteers, the incidence of side effects, including fatigue, increased temperature, and nausea, was at least 8% lower for volunteers receiving cell cultured smallpox vaccine than for those receiving dry vax. And but I I was this kind of, I don't know if it's a start of like domain or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's just odd seeing like an IT company, Computer Sciences, for the very first time in 2003 start diving into vaccines.
Yeah, you're right on the money with domain because what it turns out, most of the mechanics of how the vaccines actually work have to do. If you take the flower analogy, uh,
Mhm.
right at the end of the flower, or the hand analogy in the arm. It's right at the end of the fingers and how the fingers are articulated. They even call it the thumb, finger, and so forth, and the palm part of the thing. I hate to say this, but if you chop all the hands off, and you just have a whole bunch of the ends,
Mhm.
of the thing, you can then do different computer modeling, and then come up with a pretty good lock and key fit, like a pretty good fingers to fingers match. And I think this is the whole thing with domain. Mark Kulak talked about CompuVac. There's another program USAID called Prophecy. There was another triad called Reframe, and then I think this is domain as well. Is where we are now. We're on the fifth generation. When Bob Malone talks about fifth generation warfare, I think he's talking about fifth generation bio warfare. I think that's what domain is.
Yeah, and actually, I did a video. I was at for Memorial Day. I went to a local museum where they had some like Nazi small arms like on display, which were interesting in themselves. But I did a little video saying like we don't need these weapons as a form of control anymore because we have the bioweapons that come in a jab, and that is what they are using in the 21st century. To control society, and just kind of switch gears a little bit. um, we've been digging into some of these Soviet Union scientists and how they worked on anthrax a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying to pull this up, and just to let people know, on the board of Bob Malone's company, there's a Sergei Denseko and a Vladimir Runchenko, and both are former Soviet Union scientists. And my guess is when we brought them over into the United States, they were offensive weapons biologists working on anthrax in the labs. I actually know this one Sergei Denseko. It wasn't Ukraine at the time, but he was working in one of the Ukrainian, what is now Ukraine at the moment. So, what are your thoughts on him actually having some of these Soviet Union scientists actually employed in his own company?
Yeah, we did shows about these guys 2 years ago. I remember when I first went down to Alchem in September 2021. We did shows on Rudchenko and I think you're right, Andy. We had done. I think remember then it was called the FC Pathway, and Bob Malone in January of 2020, when the sequence just came out, he writes a 200-page paper with Ricky, the guy who's doing the DNA database lookup thing, the crime database. And you're wondering, like, where did this come from? And there are enzymes which can lop the heads off of antigens, these flower kind of protrusions from all these cells. And these guys had that. It was called the FC pathway. They had a way of doing that. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. These are bioagents. These are bioagents that have been repurposed by the old Soviet Union, and now they're being, used in a virus vaccine game here. These guys, they moved them through the Scoop Jackson Foundation. Dave Undernow found the kind of the basis of this in England. The Scoop Jackson here, or the Henry Jackson Foundation, runs Windber. But in England, they were the key ones that moved the Soviet scientists to England to port them down. Here you go. Here's the FC pathway. Good for you, Andy. Look at this. It looks like a flower too.
It looks exactly like a flower. But these Soviet scientists, they're saying they went to England first, and that's why porting down was so heavy on the anthrax research.
Yeah, they had all kinds of, if you go there, I remember joking about the bars. Everybody
like Sergei Skripal and all of them were getting murdered and all that.
Yep, but he wasn't. That was fake. I mean, he was transporting stuff back and forth from the old Soviet Union, but they made a big story about how he was a victim. But there was all sorts of things wrong with the thing. He supposedly grabbed his doorknob leaving his house. How often do you grab your doorknob when you leave your house? And then it had enough anthrax on it, or Novichok, the nerve agent, to kill a horse. If you'd have touched that, would you really, wouldn't it? And then he supposedly walked 1.5 miles. Well, no, that's not how it works. A nerve agent would hit you like right then. So there was all sorts of things with the story that didn't make any sense. But you're right, though. All these guys were brought in there sort of for a year of training by Richard Dearlove and Christopher Stevens, and then they were redeployed somewhere. They would go to the old Soviet Union on the front line, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Astana, Tbilisi, or they would go to the Baltics, up to Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, or if they were really lucky, if they were
Canalabac treatment.
Exactly. If they were Andy Jabala good looking, they would go down and get a villa on the Black Sea in Sochi or Odessa. So this was the plan. And they always present these as Russians, right? They're not. They've been westernized, they've been over in Ukraine, and now they're our guys.
Well, there's a lot of Ukrainians. There's a lot of Russians that actually go to Florida. If people don't know that, they have whole hotels where they send their wives to have dual citizenship here, so they can have their kids here in America and stuff. And it just Florida kind of is this. You say they're setting up this black fiber optic net, or they already did set up this black fiber optic network. The University of Florida, they do nanoparticle research, but they also dumped a lot of their COVID-19 research so no one could figure out what was going on down there. We have who is the Ben Bernanke, not Ben Bernanke, who was the guy that got murdered down there, one of the DAs for investigating things. The guy
Bernie Wisenet.
There's a bunch, and there's a bunch of just weird little things that happen in Florida, and they have these they have this Ukrainian Russian connection. So this just kind of solidifies some things in my mind that we see some of these guys working in the bio labs down there.
You mentioned a really good thing, though, Andy, is the last names are really good to then download their scientific papers. And now you don't need to be a scientific guru you can put them into Peter Duke's Readwise. He's been pushing this Readwise, and it's a really good tool. And they have a thing called Ghostwriter, and it'll give you a simplification of all these guys. So you can put these names in and download their stuff, and then do cross references like Annie was saying with anthrax or other things, or FC pathway. And then you can see, or furin cleavage site, so you can put in all the weaponized compound searches.
And you can do a little caveman science.
Hey, nothing
That's,
wrong with caveman science.
that's practically what I do. I get into all this science, and that's why I look forward to having you on, George, because you can break it down a little bit better than I can when it comes. Not a little bit, a lot of bit better than I can. With you, I mean, you taught your kids how to be doctors. I couldn't do that, George. Webb.
Well, I think the good thing here, Andy, is that with these tools that are coming on, I mean, Andy, some of your research has been so good. Aaron N's mentioned in the Maggot Mile and Fruman and Parnas saying, hey, you follow the murderers and follow the bloodstains, and you're going to probably get in right. They're going to be the anthrax murderers. Fruman and Parnas are going to be the anthrax murderers. They're really right down Military Trail in Boca Raton. And they had access to Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Rockville, top secret clearance, and Battelle, and where the Operation Warp Speed was in Huntsville, and FBI, DIA informant. So I mean, and plus they were in China before the breakout of the World Police Games with the Blackwater. You just can't make it up. I mean, it had to be them that killed Bruce Ivins or set up Bruce Ivins.
Well, George Webb, we are at 35 minutes. I don't know. You got any more stuff you want to get into? I'm like sweating my butt off over here. Sorry, I'm dealing with meds a little bit, and
well, Andy,
I have some stomach problems and some.
Sit back and take a breather, brother. I don't want to push anything.
I know 35 minutes we can go. We've done like 6-hour shows before. Someone just said 35 minutes is nothing. It's just like I'm sweating over here. I'm on my new meds and I'm feeling a little iffy.
Why don't we say, hey, this is a good show, and then we'll pick it up. I'll do a space tomorrow on stuff I forgot. I'll go run those guys and put them in the the Readwise and see what they did. I'll run the show back. That's the other thing is you can run these shows back and then you make sure you get the spelling just right.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a lot of fun there. It's great to see everybody in the chat. And
I do want to the Windber charrette. Is that all full yet, or do you have a couple more?
No, we have a cabin that's full, and there's a lot of tent and camping sites there as well. Hotels are tough there right this time of year, but there's 18 beds I think we've got. And so what we would have to do now is put more people, like, we just have to share more.
What do we have, like 20 people now or something like that?
Usually get about half of people who say they're going to come. So we'll make it. I think what happens is in the Midwest, they gun the prices up in the summer, hoping that somebody's going to pay it. And then as they get closer and closer, then they start cutting it back. So plus we're in this weekend, we're in Tennessee. We're in Nashville this weekend. I'm going to be speaking finally at one of these things at Rebels for a Cause. And
I was actually thinking about making a little trip up to Tennessee this weekend, George Webb.
You should. You can beat
I might come and watch your speech.
Yeah, I'm going to do a speech about all the artwork in Windber. And we're going to, if Bob Malone, we made this promise, if Bob Malone outs the Human Private Genome Project that's there and all the human genomes that are there, yours and mine, and we get him to run the analysis against the lost artwork, we'll claim and give out priceless artwork right there at the show. So if those two things happen, if Bob Malone comes to the event and he outs the fact that they've been doing this private genome, and he outs the long lost art and how it comes down the genome, we will dole out priceless treasures of art at the show this weekend. But now if Bob Malone doesn't come, then we don't have anything.
That's Rebels for a Cause in Nashville, Tennessee.
Rebels for a Cause in Nashville, Tennessee. I think it's Rebels for a Cause. I'm pretty sure.
I see there's something on all events.
Promo code. I feel like the pillow guy. And if you order this promo code, you can get my toppers and my sheet covers and my pillowcase. Sorry.
You could get, how about, you should just be like, hey, you want one of these books on the you can sign a book right behind you on the shelf, be available for $300 on George Webb.
Yeah. What NFTs? It's is it Rebels with a Cause? It's
Rebels for a Cause.
If you do Rebels for a Cause plus Franklin, Tennessee this weekend, is that what it says? That might be a different one.
Oh, okay.
But the promo code is WEBB, and you get 25% off if you put in WEBB. So if you put in Rebels for a Cause and you put in Franklin, Tennessee, making a trip to Jack Daniels. I've actually driven by the Jack Daniels plant. That's it. You can play the trailer in. Is that Tennessee?
I don't think that's a trailer. Where do you see a trailer? Yeah, it's Rebels for a Cause. Join us for a visionary cultural experience, creative artists uniting.
Yeah, that's it.
For the sovereignty of everyone is an event where musicians, artists, comedians, aerial acrobats, and various speakers gather together to counter the current debasement of culture with messages of freedom, personal agency, sovereignty, and light. Well, that's beautiful, George Webb.
And tomorrow is Pride Month, and right across the street there's going to be a big Pride thing. So it's going to kind of be traditional values versus self-mutilation values, and it's going to be right there across the street from each other, so it should be fun. Yeah, and I thought they had a little video, but maybe not. But yeah, key in WEBB, 25% off. And they got this guy. Who's the rapper who kind of is right wing?
Tom.
No, he's got a rapper name.
Yeah, the guy with the tattoos all over his face and stuff.
He did a video with Bob Malone. Not Limp Bizkit. I keep saying I want to say Limp Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
what's his name? I thought it was Tom something. Someone said Jelly Roll. I don't think is it Jelly Roll?
No, Jimmy Levy did a song with him. Jimmy Levy did a song with him. If you put in Jimmy Levy in YouTube, you should put in Jimmy Levy because this guy's got a voice.
Tom McDonald.
No, I don't think it's Tom McDonald. Oh, it could be that's his real name, but he's got a rapper name like High Definition, High Res.
High Res.
High Res.
High Res.
I think it's High REZ, High Res.
Okay, let me do a YouTube search real quick.
Yeah, High Res and Jimmy Levy. Andy, I thought of you and Addy Ads when I saw these two guys. That's how good they are.
Okay, I got their.
This isn't some slipshod thing. This is top dog.
Welcome to the revolution. Here we go. I think I may have seen this before.
We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution.
The revolution won't be televised. Government been telling lies. If you're not with us, you better step aside. Witnessing a genocide. Everything is centralized. The food that we consuming, they spraying it out with pesticides. Easily identify the sheep and the snake, the real and the fake, giving us a reason to pray. I'm gonna make my own choices. A voice for the voiceless. They trying to destroy us, avoiding the poison. It's all pointless if you don't have a purpose. If you read the verses, you'll know who we versing. Government can tell you what your worth is, look deeper than the surface. They don't even want you researching or asking questions. We all being tested. Shut your mouth and comply, that's the message. Want you depressed on prescriptions that mess with your head, got you stressing, suppressing expression.
We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised.
All right, before I get taken, I only got one YouTube channel left. I
Oh
can't.
yeah.
I
We better
can't
not.
get it taken down anymore.
Yeah,
But so you're going to be at the Rebels for a Cause this upcoming weekend.
I'll be sort of a rat baseline for high res, and I'm going to let high res. I mean, I'll for Jimmy Levy, and I'm going to let Jimmy have those high notes because I ain't touching those.
Oh,
So-
don't make me pull up you singing on Mystery Island with the Parrot Bay Trio.
you have the juice. You have the blackmail. You have the blackmail. Yeah. So Andy, let's call it a night. 52 minutes. I mean, that's almost an hour. Come on, man.
You made me feel a little bit better with the music, you know, like it is weird with the meds, like it comes and goes sometimes. You just like feel like absolute trash for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got distracted and I feel better again. So I actually could keep going if you wanted to.
Well, you know what I should say is just a little plug for Aaron Adler here. Aaron basically called me and said, "Hey, dude, I'm in Pittsburgh, and Tyrone's in Pittsburgh, and you see him saying Owen Schroyer's going to be there as well from InfoWars, and Pryor that Peter likes so much, Aaron Pryor, Jim's Pryor. I can't remember his name. Dwyer. He's going to be there. A lot of guys are going to be there, like 50 speakers or something ridiculous over 3 days. Yeah, Patrick Byrne will be there. But the big thing is I'm going to tell this story about the artwork. I mean, I didn't think it was a Mossad operation. Okay. I knew that the Mossad guy met with Bob's boss on the morning of 9/11, and I was willing to let that go. Dov Zakheim did the autopilot and everything. I was willing to let it go. But then I heard that there's this huge $1 billion art collection going to Windber. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. That's it. This is Mossad. I'm going to promote this and tell this story. This is going to be my speech when I get to this weekend. Now, isn't it interesting that Rockefeller, when David Rockefeller died, they sold off all the artwork and all the stuff in the house. And I said, that would be a perfect opportunity to introduce a whole bunch of forgeries and sell the forgeries for $500 million for all the charities. If it's to the charities, you're not committing fraud, right? And you give it to your own charities, like the Rockefeller Fund, the David Rockefeller Fund, the DL Rockefeller Fund. It's like 18 different David Rockefeller funds. And then you put all the real stuff in the mountain. The perfect Rockefeller gypsy switch, but maybe we're trying to find the artwork right now. So it's a fun, we got this lady who looks like Giselle, and she's the art dealer, and she's all over China, and we got Hunter Biden, private people with the art. It's all, well, Trey got it. It's all over the place. We got art everywhere. It's confusing. So anyway, it's gonna be a fun weekend. It's gonna be a fun weekend.
It does make sense. And I know you've probably seen them, those videos of like the semis during, they're like, these tunnels are in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, these facilities, and they're literally like driving underground, like in a semi with like bay doors, and there's like housing facilities and stuff. And it's like, that's all underground in Pennsylvania. What's going on over there? And it's like, housing the goods.
Not far from the Army War College. We went and did a charrette there.
Got some Fort Knox gold in there.
Well, we did a show, if you remember, in Gettysburg, and then we went up to Carlisle, and there's a whole bunch of history in Carlisle. Bettina's up there, and the Army War College. They're bringing in all the NATO types and Mavney, and the whole thing. And so, and we got a couple of unfinished railroad tunnels. We got all the coal mines. It'll be fun. It'll just be a fun scavenger hunt. And plus we're going to bring in the speakers, and everybody's going to learn all the techniques and stuff. And hopefully we can get you via Zoom, Andy. And we'll put up a big bed sheet and project our projector up there, and we'll have you 50 feet tall.
Oh, I do plan on making some trips here pretty soon. What day is the shred exactly again?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 23rd, 24th, 25th. Aaron also has, if Tyrone comes down, maybe Aaron will have some extra space. Or, you know, we don't have to stay. It's only 80 miles from Pittsburgh, so we don't have to all pack right in there into by the 93 Memorial. We can be in Ligonier and, you know, Altoona.
Addie and I stayed at some crack hotels that were, that were close, and some truck stop hotel on the way
Yeah.
to Maryland the one time. I think we got bed bugs, but no.
The CIA agent that sells all this artwork, Andy, 100 million views. She has a video of 100 million views. Could we watch that video, Amaryllis Fox? I want to see the 100 million view video now.
I gotta get the spelling right.
Aaron Adler says we'll get you accommodated somehow, some way. JJ Cooey may come out. You know, he lives in Pittsburgh. Mark Kulak's talking about coming out. That would be cool, you know, to have him. I think a big part of it is a lot of people want to meet somebody and talk to them before they kind of say, okay, I want to support you. You know, like I'll give you $50 a month or something like that. They want to meet you and see you're a good person. They know I'm a horrible person. They're not going to give me any money, but hopefully Mark is going to be able to get some more money, and JJ is going to get some more support. And, you know, I'll tell you, Aaron Adler may just restart this whole neighborhood news. And Andy, you may be the star. You may be one of the stars.
Well, I don't know if he wants to do that again with Andy.
As long as you don't
help, but I'll be down.
As long as you zoom in, as long as you zoom in, who cares, right?
I fooled him once.
You got the late night comedy hour, Andy.
I'm trying to find this $100 million 100 million view.
Amaryllis Fox, and if you do CIA is another thing that may help. And or if somebody wants to put in a title for the 100 million views, Aaron Adler, you probably have his.
I have her profile on the screen right now. Okay. For the podcast audience. I'll read it real quick. But Amaryllis Hope Fox, formerly Amaryllis Demerel Thornburg, is an American writer, television host, public speaker, and former Central Intelligence Agency officer. She departed from a role at the CIA in 2010. Subsequently, Fox authored a memoir about her time in the CIA entitled Life Undercover, Coming of Age in the CIA, published by Knopf Doubleday. She's host of a 6-episode Netflix documentary series, The Business of Drugs, released in 2020. I do actually have a little, it's 59 minutes long, but we can play a little. So this Amaryllis Fox is in charge of the Windber art.
We don't know that to be true. She's a CIA art dealer. And so we think, I mean, how many CIA art dealers do you know that were in the same places? There's China art, India art, African art, and also French Revolutionary art. And that matches the description that Nick Jacobs gave for this art trove. And they get it in the middle of July 2020, right in the middle of the COVID. And this same person comes out and defends all the tissue samples in 2002 at the same lab. So it's got to be somebody who's got a top secret clearance. She does. She worked in WMD. She worked in Pakistan for the Counterterrorism Center. So she fits a lot of the profiles. Yeah. Is
she buying Hunter Biden artwork at all, or?
Well, we think she's the juice behind the Hunter Biden artwork. You buy a $10 Hunter Biden, and then you get the $200 million Rockefeller.
Okay. That makes more sense. you just rip off the front Hunter Biden, and then
I think
behind.
I think Rockefeller parlayed those pieces of art maybe to get some oil rights, but she has a. She did TEDx Teen. There you go. Let's hear what she says here.
Let me tell you, your book was a total page turner. And when I finished it, my first thought was, I will never complain about my job again. I mean, well, first, what does it mean to be in clandestine service at the CIA and to be under non-official cover? How is that different from other roles at the CIA?
So the role of CIA that sets it apart from the military, from really other parts of the intelligence community, is to build human relationships with human sources who are, for whatever reason, positioned to be able to help us predict or prevent acts of war or acts of terrorism. And
You would say predict.
You would say USAID predict.
increasingly, that's a really rare and powerful thing in an age of reliance on technical surveillance and technical warfare. I always say it's sort of like how if you have friends who you follow on social media and then friends that you see once a week for a drink, right? The friends that you follow on social media, you know the facts of their life, right? If they've had a baby or they post a photo where they're getting engaged, you know those data points. But if you see them for a drink every week, you know how they feel about all those things. You know whether they're afraid to get married or, you know, they're planning to have babies before they announce them. And that ability to understand somebody's fears, their dreams, their hopes, their plans and aspirations allows you to predict geopolitics in a way that technical data points just can't. It's the why instead of the what. And so human intelligence gatherers, CIA officers, are tasked with going out and doing this at its best, very soulful work of meeting and identifying sources that have the potential to want to leave this legacy of protecting lives. And slowly building enough trust and rapport with these sources to be able to move them to a place where you can do that work together.
But there are
Now is she what did you call your I forgot the name of your nickname for the girls, for the woman CIA officers?
Oh, not Oconus Lures.
Was she a Oconus lure?
Well, I don't know. I mean, she got started awfully soon. I think sometimes these TED Talks are kind of like the pre-staging round. If you bring up her, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. If you bring up her TED Talk, she was already kind of being slated. This is why I say there's something about the Thornburr family. If you go back, her father was CIA agent. Her mother was tied in with OSS, but the special operations executive, and intelligence in England. So she may be the actual inheritor from her mother's side of some of this artwork. We don't know. Supposedly what they did is they went through all of the Rothschild artwork that was in the King's art gallery, right, and found out what part was attributed to nobles in France. I'm going all the way back to the French Revolution when Robespierre's cutting heads off, and now they're going to be brokering this art. And this Melissa Prober we looked at is running a genome project and trying to find artwork for the folks that lost relatives with the Nazis. So there's lots of stuff going on here: Nazi art, French Revolution art, China art. We got everything going on.
So, and the fact that she's a CIA agent that was in China, during the early 2000s. I'm not sure when she left the CIA exactly, but the story was written in 2019. I don't know if she was there around then at all.
She's on the Bobby Kennedy campaign right now, which is why we look at it and say, and she's touring with the campaign. So we're like, whoa, this is interesting. Here we go. Here's her tip.
So Bobby, he has a CIA agent on his campaign.
Her. Here she is on a TED Talk before she becomes a CIA agent.
In my case, it was aerospace engineering at the Naval Academy or law at Oxford. And they seemed like such
wildly different paths in life. And I so wanted to do both of them, and I couldn't. So I did what we've all been taught to do. I sat down and wrote a list of pros and cons. The Naval Academy meant the chance to be a naval aviator, to fly Tomcats off of aircraft carriers, and maybe someday to pilot the space shuttle. But I was scared that all that discipline would crowd out the arts and creativity. And I didn't know about being asked to fight for something if I didn't believe in it. And maybe most importantly, I was pretty sure I didn't want to make my bed with hospital corners every morning. On the other hand, Oxford was this life of intellectual exploration, of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, conversations about the meaning of things deep into the night. But I was scared that cloistering myself away in academia would start to be suffocating, and it would be hard to make a contribution in the world while studying things in the abstract. So as long as I spent on this list and as much advice as I asked from people I trusted, I didn't get any closer to making up my mind. And as a last-ditch effort, I signed up for a 2-week volunteer trip to Thailand, to the Burmese border. I'd been involved with the Burmese political refugee community in Washington, D.C. while I was in high school.
Is she married to a Kennedy, George?
Yes, she's married to
Robert
RK the third,
Okay.
Bobby's Bobby's grandson. Now Maureen Heck, who's going to be there, I think, at this thing with special guests. She says that her stepfather is a billionaire who owns a PCR testing company, DNA testing company. I'd like to know that name, and I'd like to know. I'd like to know that name, and I'd like to know that company.
So they're saying Fox's stepfather owns a PCR testing. I think she tagged me in that on Twitter, actually. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing, because Perkin-Elmer was the guy who, Tony White from Perkin-Elmer, the billionaire, is the person who has, after 9/11, when no commercial jets are in the sky, he's the one who takes his jet off and leaves Connecticut and flies into California and picks up Craig Venter, who flies back to Rockville, Maryland, to sequence the human genome, the anthrax genome. They were already working on it since '99, actually, so it didn't really happen right then. But still, he's the only plane in the sky after 9/11, and that kind of smacks of state sponsorship. And this is why I think Bob Malone doesn't want to answer the question. What if Bob Malone was also on the airplane? Because remember, Bob was out at
if he was actually on the airplane.
Yeah. He was out at Davis, with Murray Gardner. What if he got on the airplane? It's like, oh my God, I don't want to say I was on the plane with Vetter. Oh no. So we don't know. But yeah.
Trying to find who her stepfather is.
Maureen might want to put it in the notes. Maureen. Oh, Stephen Rails. That's her. Oh, of course. That's her. I didn't know Stephen Rails had a DNA collection company with PCR. Stephen Rails does? Okay. So Andy, get this.
You want a second? I'm Googling for you. Let's go.
Mitchell, first of all, Google Mitchell Rails. Mitchell Rails is the guy who runs the National Academy.
Stephen Rails is a top 200 art collector in the world.
Right. I think he runs the National Gallery of Art. But I didn't know. Yeah, bring up Stephen
Mitchell and Emily Rails. They run the European and American art collection.
I thought, what if Mossad ran the auction for David Rockefeller's art collection? I thought, oh man, it's all forgeries. You know,
they're all still in Argentina with the Nazis.
no, they're in Windber. They're in Windber.
Sorry,
He's from Pittsburgh.
I didn't mean to ruin the storyline. I was just trying to.
He's from Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh. Yeah, yeah.
So the overview of Stephen Rails. The billionaire Stephen Rails built his fortune mostly through running the Danaher Corporation, industrial design and manufacturing conglomerate, alongside his brother Mitchell, a fellow top 200 collectors. So both the Rails brothers are top 200 art collectors. Both Rails have been known to be shy of the press. Danaher is named after a river in Montana where the two have a good luck fishing, according to Washington Post. Stephen Rails boasts a net worth of $6.7 billion, according to Forbes, and also owns a film production company, Indian Paintbrush, that has helped support numerous movies by Wes Anderson, among them the Darjeeling Limited, Moonrise Kingdom, the Grand Budapest Hotel, Isle of Dogs. Together, the brothers have acquired more than 36 companies through Danaher, whose revenues were projected at $20 billion and sales estimated at $19.9 billion in 2018. In 2016, they launched a new venture, Fortive Corporation, according to Forbes. Rails will acquire GE's biopharma business. So he's getting General Electric's biopharma business for $21.4 billion. His interests in collecting include Impressionism and 20th century art, and he's one of the major donors to the Peeler Art Center at DePaul University, of which he is an alumnus.
Is that DePaul with an L or DePaul with a W?
DePaul with a W.
That's in Western Indiana, and it's a math and science high school, and a lot of the people there kind of go into the military. So it's interesting, his background there. But wow, he has a company called CPHID, which is CEPHEID for COVID. A lot of these companies that came out of the GE were when Jeff Immelt, and I knew somebody worked directly for Jeff Immelt at GE. He kind of got undermined, and they ended up having to sell off part of GE, and they sold off their bio business. So it's interesting. I'm starting to put more weight on this, the fake artwork here, because all these companies came up with $500 million in, all these David Rockefeller funds came up with all this money. So maybe that's when they went on their buying. Integrated DNA solutions. Aaron is saying, oh my gosh, this is a treasure trove.
Apparently, according to Bloomberg, Danaher manufactures voting machines as well.
Oh, that'll make Chris, the IP hunter, happy. Danaher failed to nominate or even appoint a single African American to their directorship of their company. Well, that'll change. Wow. And Aldebaran, ALD. Let's see some of their companies, Andy, if you can go a little bit longer. Wow, this is kind of like we hit gold here in the tunnel. We found the artwork here. It's right in front of all these companies. They put it into all these companies. GE got clobbered. Yeah. Immelt got undermined. You knew that was going to happen because Jack Welch was, doing the pump and dump thing. And
so it'd be Danaher PCR test, right?
Yeah, or just the Danaher companies. I mean, there's Integrated DNA Solutions, it looks like. Aldebaran does plasmid DNA production. Aaron says, guess who does plasmid DNA vaccines? Inovio and Bob Malone. I wonder if Aldebaran does Inovio's vaccine production. Wow. This is getting really good. Well, this is going to be part of my presentation in 2 days. Thank you very much.
There you go, George. See, aren't you happy I stayed on a little bit more? So
I am. This is great. This is great. I'll be able to take screenshots. You know what I do now, Andy, is I don't even go back anymore. I don't even go back. I just take the picture right as I go.
That's all you got to do.
And so I won't forget these. Man, this is awesome. Who else is in the group That's my key question.
Danaher Corporation. Give me a second.
And the name Danaher, well, that's another. The Danaher, oh, the river in Wyoming. I kid you not. Favorite fishing creek, if it's the same Crystal River, that Dick Cheney's father, as a uranium prospector, used to fish at. Check out the Crystal, the Danaher River in Wyoming, not far from Shinkolobwe, I believe. The Shinkolobwe mine in Wyoming which was uranium 1, is named after the Shinkolobwe in Congo, which is the richest uranium mine where all the atomic bomb uranium came from. Check it. See if I'm going to go check it right now. Is Shinkolobwe mine near the Danaher River?
I'm sure there's some Danaher Liz Cheney connections as well.
The Danaher River in Wyoming. This is great, Andy. I'm glad you had a second life here.
The Danaher Mountain. Let's see if I can pull up Google Maps, actually.
Danaher Mountain. I think we found out why they call it Danaher. All that stolen uranium that Dick Cheney had left over from megatons to megawatts, they had to convert it over. And Warren Buffett, remember, he bought it all with a Hunter Biden BlackBerry. Remember? So what do you do with all the cash? You can't put it in a bank. You buy artwork for it, of course. There you go.
So here's the Danaher Corporation in Sunnyvale, California.
Yeah, Sunnyvale, that's to the south of the bay there, down by past Mountain View and stuff where Google is. Deborah says the Danaher is a tributary of the South Fork of the Flathead River in western Montana. In the early 1980s, it was a setting for a fishing trip where Stephen and Mitchell Rails envisioned. Now, it actually goes all the way back to Lawrence Rockefeller. Lawrence Rockefeller, which was the second brother of John D. Rockefeller, not the first John D. Rockefeller, but the second John D. Rockefeller. Lawrence Rockefeller, David Rockefeller's brother, would go to that river and fish, and with Dick Cheney's dad as a uranium prospector. And it was the Cheneys that talked the Rockefellers into moving out of oil and moving toward uranium, like as the fuel of the future. We should corner the market with uranium first, then do global warming and make sure nobody could use fossil fuel and do carbon credits and social credit scoring and all this. This is all in the plan, I think, with the Rockefellers. I don't know if they've cornered the market on uranium, but it was the Cheneys that talked them into that plan.
So that was a great point by Deborah too. The Rocky Mountain Lab is over in that area.
Yeah, there's one on the mountain. Yeah, there's one on the Wyoming side, and then just on the other side to the north up by Calgary is the
Heinz Feldman Lab.
Yeah, the Heinz Feldman, Manitoba. Was it Manitoba? I can't remember.
It was kind of close to the border there. Sorry, I can't find it right now.
Maybe it's Saskatchewan. But south was okay. Cheney's oil business was in Casper. Yeah, the oil is different. The oil is kind of in basins, like a tar basins. The dinosaurs couldn't make it up the mountains, right? So they ended up in the low spots, going to the water as the water dried up. So most of the dinosaur bones, usually near the oil, the swamps, that's going to be in the low spot like Casper. But the uranium is going to be trickling down the rocks, right? They usually have some kind of mountain spring near uranium and very fresh water, good fishing kind of thing. And Lawrence Rockefeller, he built the resort over there, Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole is, I think, on the, well, here we go, Danaher, COVID response.
So you got Danaher, COVID-19 response. Danaher is immensely proud to have several operating companies directly involved in the fight against COVID-19. At They do diagnostic testing at IDT. IDT was the first company in the U.S. to have their primer and probe kits approved by the CDC for use as a key component in testing for COVID-19. Beckman Coulter Diagnostics launched 6 COVID-related tests in 6 months, including high-throughput antigen tests, helping make higher volume mass testing possible. Their IgC and IgM antibody test provides a snapshot of COVID-19 immune response. Cepheid, gold standard point of care molecular test, was the first to market in April 2020, delivering results in 45 minutes. The company has since launched their 4-in-1 Expert Express SARS-CoV-2 flu RSV test and shipped 9 million tests in Q4 2020 alone. Vaccine and therapeutics development. Sativia is developing a specific prototype affinity resin and providing technology and services to support the efforts of scientists at the University of Queensland and Brisbane, who are developing an experimental vaccine for COVID-19 currently in preclinical testing. The vaccine is being prepared to enter clinical results. PALE, as part of the consortium led by the University of Oxford, PALE is, or Paul, not sure how to say that exactly, is the leading manufacturing scale-up of Chad OX1, which has been fast-tracked as a leading candidate for COVID-19 globally. Small quantities of clinical material have been manufactured, and the manufacturing process has been transferred to Paul, who will develop the large-scale process, enable manufacturing of millions of doses. You want me to keep going? I guess there's 2 more. Beckman Coulter Life Services. With a firm commitment to enabling researchers to gain greater understanding of COVID-19, Beckman Coulter Life Services supports scientific advancements with workflow solutions ranging from immune system and pathogen research to viral particle characterization to vaccine and therapy development. Molecular devices in support of global research community working on COVID-19 cellular response and vaccine development. Molecular devices is rapidly deploying validated and compliant laboratory solutions, providing resources that address common applications in infectious disease research and offering uninterrupted access to application scientists, tech support service team members, helping researchers around the world accelerate scientific discovery. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different companies underneath the Danaher umbrella that were part of the COVID-19 response, George Webb.
Well, that's a lot, Andy. So I think we got a lot of new juice here. I can't wait to tell the story in front of a big crowd. And we've got big enough speakers. We're going to be able to talk to the Pride crowd too. I'm reaching across the aisle here and saying, hey, you folks don't like corruption either. So
the owner of Danaher's daughter was a CIA agent.
That's correct.
And they're
both into artwork. They're both into artwork. They're like 2 of the top guys. One of them's with the National Gallery of Art. And see, this is the thing. Once you get to the State Department, got all the artwork. Okay, every time there's a revolution or and a whole bunch of dead people, and now you have all the artwork, like after World War II, it sits in storage until you can kind of make it go back to the original owner. So the State Department had a rotation program among all the embassies where they used the art for a while. That's the perfect opportunity to swap it out for a fake. This is as old as the hills as far as the Mission Impossible plot, but there you go.
See, Deborah is saying right here that the movie or the TV show Yellowstone's actually about the Danaher family. I'm just joking. She's just saying they've been in Montana since the 1900s.
Yeah, I think that if you go back to the gold mining and days and so forth, you'll probably see some Danahers. But the Donner party is certainly not the same. But it is interesting to get Lawrence Rockefeller, because it really was Dick Cheney on on the mule and the horse and everything, and taking them out there and saying, "Hey, camp under the stars," that really got Lawrence Rockefeller out of mining. I mean, gold into mining. That's really Cheney's. He doesn't like oil. He will go and he'll do revolutions, false flags, shoot planes down, whatever he needs to do for oil, but he doesn't like oil. Halliburton and all that, he just doesn't like oil. He loves, because I think it reminded him of being with his dad. You know, it's like breaking rocks and looking at, you know, pouring acid and seeing what, you know, that was fun for him. I think he misses that. So maybe Dick, hey, come on out to Windber. We got a mountain right there for you to, Yukon Cornelius, man, go for it.
Well, George Webb, thank you for your time once again. I'm sorry for my little halftime woe is me woe is me experience I had. I was just feeling some type of way in the moment. So thanks for plowing through during the time being. And I just gave Aaron Adler a call to see if he wanted to come on the show, and gives me no way it's happening now, Andy. I can't do it. So next time, hopefully Aaron will actually jump on the show for a little bit, and I'm sure some of the audience members will like seeing him on.
I see Jen Madison saying, you know, wild theories and stuff. We're showing the website. We didn't create the website. We didn't buy the companies. We're not the national. We don't run the National Gallery of Art. I mean, we're just showing the actual people that are involved. And you know, what do you do? So there you go. All right. Thank you, Andy. It was great. It was a fun show.
Fun show. See ya. Hopefully in Tennessee, maybe this weekend, George Webb. I'll let you know if I make the trek.
Come early. Don't come late. Come Friday night and Saturday, and you'll meet all the gang on Friday night. All the speakers and stuff.
All right.
Okay.
It's a beautiful world, George Webb.
Thank you. Bye-bye.